Hello, and welcome to The Writer's Dream, a show by writers for writers. On this program, we talk about the author's journey, from the writing process, what inspires authors, what motivates authors, to the business side of publishing, how to find an agent, or how to find a traditional book publisher, or how to self-publish a book if that's the path you've chosen. And we also talk about marketing, which is becoming very important for writers as they move forward in this digital age. My name is Dina Santarelli, and I am pleased to say today we have with us Karen Bonnet, who is the author of a new young adult novel called Whale Island and the Mysterious Bones. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here.
Thank you, Dina.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I'd like to say thank you for having me here and giving me the opportunity to be here and talk about my book, and thank you to LTV studio staff and crew as well. Before I wrote my book, I was a journalist, so I had a lot of writing experience through that, and I got involved in public relations, and now I'm a public relations and marketing consultant with my own business, KLV Services. But I started writing the book, it was 10 years ago, and I always wanted to write a children's book. I loved books when I was a kid. I read so many books, and I wanted to give children the same feeling that I had when I read my favorite books. I wanted them to have that same feeling for the books of their own favorite books.
So tell me, it must be difficult with a day job. I mean, when did you do your writing?
Well, I worked part-time, so I was able to, I like to write mostly in the morning. I'm a morning person, and I like to have a block of time to put towards it. I didn't like to do it here and there. I wanted to know I had a certain amount of time to do it, and that was the time I devoted to it.
So you said you started writing this book 10 years ago. Is that when the idea came about for this book, or had you had the idea for a very long time and then you just got the chance to start working on it then, or how did it happen?
I always wanted to write a children's book, and I was back in school again, and it actually happened that one of my classes, the professor gave me the opportunity to do just that. And that was my project. That was one of my projects.
Oh, great.
So I started then, and then it took me about 5 months to write the book, and then many years of editing it and putting it on the back burner, and the whole publishing process.
So it took you 5 months to write this entire?
It took me about 5 months to write it.
That's incredible. That's actually a very short time. I mean, there are some writers that spend years and years, writing the book, let alone editing the book.
Well, once you sit down in front of the computer, I just felt that my mind just was totally focused on what I was doing, and everything flowed. I had the ideas already in my mind, so everything just flowed naturally.
Now, where'd you get the idea from? I know you said you wanted to always write children's literature, but what was it about this particular story?
Well, when I was a kid, I wrote, my favorite book of all time was called Carbonal, the King of the Cats, and it was a great story, and in it there was the little girl who was the main character was able to talk to a cat when she picked up a witch's broomstick. It was all part of the plot, and I thought that was fascinating to be able to talk to animals, and it always stayed with me. The story was great, and I decided to do something where I would have the children find these mysterious whale bones. In my book is a book for children 8 to 12, and one of the things that happens is when they get to Whale Island is they find these ancient whale bones, and it helps them uncover many types of mysteries, including the ability to talk to whales, dolphin, and fish. Kids love it.
Who's the protagonist in your story? Who's the narrator?
It's Caitlin. Caitlin Sarah Longley and her brother Will. She's the main. Mine's the third person, so it's a narrator, and then the two protagonists are Caitlin and her brother Will. And Will actually is so much like my brother Mickey, and a lot of my characters came from my childhood also. And he's just like my brother Mickey, who is very smart and just got A's in school without even trying, or I had to, study very hard. So it's funny how people in your life help you develop your characters.
Was it difficult to sort of get into the mindset of a teenager, a girl teenager, or what did it come naturally for you?
Caitlin, the girl who's the main character, is a little bit like me, so I kind of, her personality is a little bit like me. And so I was able to draw on some of my past experiences and feelings to, draw out her character.
I know so many writers say that all the characters of their books are sort of extensions of themselves. They sort of put a piece of themselves into, many of the characters in their books.
Right.
Would you agree with that? Would you say that that's true?
I would say that's probably true. More so with Caitlin, although I'm not exactly like her. But because I know my brother so well, and some of the other characters in my book are, somewhat like my cousins. So I think that, it's because of your past experiences and the people in your life that you develop your characters.
Now, you talked about what inspired you to write this book, but I'm curious, what inspires you to actually, because this is, I think, the problem a lot of writers have, is sitting down, especially when you have a day job, and just writing.
Right.
I mean, you can come up with every excuse in the book not to do it. I don't have enough time, I have other things to do.
Yeah.
What was it that motivated you to actually sit down in the mornings, you said, before work, and bang this out?
Well, sometimes I come up with ideas. I'd always have a pad with me, and I'd keep a pad in my car. I'd pad and pen in my car and my night table, and sometimes ideas would just pop into my head. And so I knew I'd have to write them down, and then I'd sit in front of the computer. I'd make a day where I would just sit down in front of the computer and get those thoughts out there. Otherwise, if you don't write them down, it's forgotten. So
I know, as a writer, I find that I had so many little pieces of paper everywhere where I've written ideas down that it's hard to get them all together.
Right.
What would you say? Would you say that is the most challenging part of writing, or what would you say is the most challenging part of writing this book, or of writing a book?
The most challenging part of writing the book for me was really developing the characters' personalities to give them their own voice. I love writing. I've always liked writing. I never had a problem with writing. In fact, it's therapeutic for me. I love to, once I'm sitting down, I lose track of time. But the hardest part for me was developing the characters. I wanted them each to have their own personality and voice, and that's very hard to do because you want, as a writer and an author, you want to evoke emotion in your readers. And what happens is I did give my manuscript to a children's librarian in Long Island, in Oceanside, and she was very helpful, and she loved the story. She said it was a page-turner, but she found that she was very attached to one of the characters and loved this character, Bartholomew, which is another character that the kids meet along the way. She found that she wanted to be more attached to the two main characters, so I had to do a little work to do that, and I think that's very hard to do, to evoke emotion in a reader.
I agree. I agree, especially with different characters, not just the one main character.
Exactly. Right.
Now, I assume there's a villain in Whale Island. Let's talk about that. Is it so many? I hear so many times about actors saying how it's so much fun to play a villain. Is it fun to write a villain?
It is fun to write a villain.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a villain in a fiction book. You need to have somebody who's a hero, somebody who's a villain, and other characters in between. And my villain is Captain Sharkley. Captain Theodore Sharkley, who the kids meet after their Uncle Huey's boat capsizes on the last day of school, and they kind of end up on the shore of an island. They don't know what happened to their uncle, and they end up in some town. They don't know where they are, and when they do make it to a town the next morning, they meet up with Captain Sharkley's first mate, a big man, and they meet Captain Sharkley, and he says, "You can use the cell phone on the ship." And a very villainous man with steely eyes, and just he actually uses them in his quest to find these whale bones. So they do escape the ship. They escape the ship with his nephew Bartholomew, who does not like his uncle, and they make it to Whale Island. It's a fun story. It's a big adventure story.
Did you find it difficult channeling that sort of villainous type of character, or?
Well, I'm not a villainous person. So.
No, I didn't think you were.
So it was just I had to go back again to my when I was a kid, and the villains in the books that I read, and stories that really captured my attention and stayed ingrained in my memory. So I kind of used those, as, I guess, to come up with his personality.
Now, did you ever experience writer's block? I mean, if you had these set times that you really needed to sit down and write, and even to edit, did you have those moments where you just looked at the screen and said, "I don't know what to write"? You went blank.
Sometimes I found the hardest thing was if I wasn't in the mood to write that day, that just I have to sit down in front of the computer now, and then just getting started. So I found that what helped me would be just to clear my mind and not think of anything else I had to do, during the day, no distractions, and then once I sat there and started, I was fine.
It's true. I don't think people realize that, it doesn't always come easily. You know, you have to really discipline yourself to sit down and push yourself to write, even when it's not coming to you.
Right,
because if we waited for all these moments of inspiration, I think none of us would ever put a word to paper.
That's right. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the publishing process. You have the book completed, you've done editing, you actually had what they call a beta reader, somebody read the book and give you input, and then you went in and incorporated some more edits, and now you're ready to publish. So what did you do? What was your first step?
Okay, the publishing process was very time-consuming because as you know, it's very hard to break into a traditional publisher. So I sent it out. I had to do a lot of research on their guidelines and what they wanted. I had to research the ones that would take my type of genre.
Right.
You know, and so
I'm sorry. Where did you research? What types of places did you go to look?
A writer's market.
Writer's market.
Writer's market is one of them. There was several other ones I can't think of right now, but that was my main one, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the biggies.
I have other books at home. Yeah. And so I did that, and then I did my query. I developed my query letter and a synopsis, and then I sent it out to those publishers. I heard in the beginning you have to send it one at a time. Well, I did that, and then you wouldn't hear back from them for sometimes 6 to 9 months. So I kept hearing different stories from different people, other authors, and they'd say, no, just send it to a few at a time. You know, as long as you state that in your query letter, that you're sending it to other people, it's okay.
Right, they call that simultaneous submissions.
So that's what I did. I sent it to about 8 traditional publishers, and then to maybe 2 agents. And then when the rejection letters came many months later, I would sit down in front of my computer and edit it over and over. I wanted it to be just perfect for the next time.
Right.
And then I put it on the back burner for a while, you know, because you get busy with other things.
Of course, of course. So then what made you decide finally to say, you know what, I'm going to self-publish this book?
Well, I was getting tired of the waiting process and waiting to hear back from publishers. And also, the main character in my book, her name is Caitlin, and I developed her character many years ago, and then I had a granddaughter 2.5 years ago named Caitlin. And I decided, well, I want this book to be published before she's too old to read it. So I said, let me go ahead and start this, look into the research on looking into custom publishers, self-publishers, and I did that. And I used called a custom publisher in Long Island. After researching many of them, and I went that route.
Which publisher did you choose?
I used Legwork Teen Publishing.
And what was it about Legwork that you thought was the perfect fit for your book?
Well, I talked to them, and I knew another author, a friend of mine, who used them and was happy with them. And they do something called custom publishing, and they use all of the what a traditional publisher would do to publish your book. They would do the same thing.
Right.
The only thing I didn't do with them was I do all my own marketing because I have that in my background. So they were very thorough, and they were nice to work with.
So what's exactly involved in the self-publishing process? I mean, so you submit your manuscript to the custom publisher,
right?
And what happens then?
You submit the manuscript, and then they give it to an editor. They have to approve it first. They don't just accept you. And then after they approve it and like the storyline, they goes through an editorial. They go through 2 editorial rounds.
Right.
And could go to a third, but mine was pretty clean. They didn't really have to do much because I edited it so many times that it only went to 2 rounds. And an editor, then they send it back to you, and they have a graphic artist do the layout and the book layout. And the spine and the cover. My son actually did the illustration of the cover of my book.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Francis Bonnet is an excellent graphic artist, and he's an artist as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So he and I worked on the cover together. I had an idea, and he just expanded on it, took my vision, and made it even better.
So you basically approve every step of the process?
Every step of the process.
In self-publishing?
Right.
Okay.
I read the book. I had to read every page, you know, and make sure that they did, you know, their editing, and I had to accept their changes, whether or not I accepted them. I didn't have to, but if I agreed, I would just tell them, yes, it's fine. Yeah.
Now you chose. Now you can choose different packages when you do self-publishing, correct? As far as what type of books you'd like, whether it's ebooks or printed versions, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, I just did the printed version for now, and then actually I found through a fellow author, Linda Frank, she told me that she actually put her book on Kindle and the Barnes & Noble Nook, and we just found out the process. Anybody can do it. If you have a book, a manuscript form, or a book published already, you can do that. And we put it on Kindle and Nook, and it's available to people who want to download electronic books that way.
That's wonderful. So is that something you did through the self-publisher, or did you just do that on your own?
We did that on our own. Yeah,
that's fabulous.
You can do it through the publisher. They do offer that, but it's an additional charge for that. And why not? If you can do it on your own, learn a new process, why not?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would think I imagine that the self-publishing process was much faster than you found the traditional publishing process.
Yes. It was faster. Yeah, the traditional, I'm sure, would have taken wait for the 6 months, and then it takes sometimes a couple of years before they even actually publish the book.
Right. Right. So how long did it take you, say, from when you submitted your manuscript the first time to when you held that book in your hands for the first time, which I imagine was the greatest feeling?
Oh, it was a wonderful feeling. It was wonderful to see my book in print.
Right.
It took about, I would say, maybe 4 months, maybe something like that. I think it was about 4 months.
And that's from start to finish?
Or 5 months. Yeah, from start to finish. Because my book was clean. It didn't need a lot of editing, so... and the editors didn't have a lot to do with as far as that went.
Right.
All that editing over and over again that I did was pretty clean.
That's great. So what happens now? You have the book in your hands, and how does the self-publisher go about getting readers? I think this is probably the hardest part of the process, and so many writers think that the writing part is the most difficult.
Yeah, no.
But marketing has become such a big facet of publishing and selling books.
I think it's probably the most important thing you can do for your book, and it's very time-consuming. You have to promote your book. Takes a lot of time. You need to really get out there, make a lot of contacts. I went to different schools during last year. My book came out in January, so I was able to present my book to schools. I went to a couple of bookstores, the Book Review in Huntington. I went to another bookstore, Chapter One Books in Oceanside. I've been to schools even in San Diego. I went to San Diego, and because I knew someone out there who knew some of the people in schools there, I took that opportunity to present my books to 2 schools out there.
Now, when you say that you went to schools and things like that in libraries, is it just a matter of calling them up or emailing them and saying, hey, I'm a new author and I'd like to...
Oh, it's a matter of more than just calling. You have to call them. Sometimes it's several phone calls. and then you email them and give them a synopsis of the book, and more calls later.
Right. But it's the follow-up and persistence.
Being very, It's determination and perseverance that really gets you in the door, I think. So, and I'll be in a library in the fall, and I'm hoping to get into more schools, because that's really my audience, is the kids and their parents.
Right.
So I'm hoping to get into more schools in the fall, in the school year.
And what happens when you have an appearance at the library? Obviously, it's promoted by the library newsletter, those kinds of things, right? And what else do you do to promote those appearances that you do?
Well, I do all the promoting myself. I've done all the marketing for my book. I did all the signs. I did all the press releases, anything having to do with marketing and publicity. I have contacts with the media, so I've been sending press releases out. Anytime I had a book presentation, I sent it out, and I have some articles that were printed in some of the papers. So it's a lot of work to promote your book, but it just means you have to make a lot of contacts and continue to be motivated to do that.
In terms of like signage or any type of, what's the bare bones that you need, would you say, for a self-published author to go about and start doing these readings and seminars and things? Is it just a matter of showing up? How much signage do you need? Do you need brochures? Do you need handouts?
Oh, sure. I have brochures, handouts. We have letters that go to the schools. Many different kinds of marketing materials like that. We have a brochure that's I give out to everybody, and every time we have an event, I have a flyer. Pre-order forms go to the schools, and if parents want to order the books, that's been very helpful in selling the book. And so pre-order forms, flyers, anything to help promote the book.
Now, when you appear at bookstores and libraries, do you do readings? Do you read a portion of the book, or do you do a completely different type of program?
I do I have a PowerPoint presentation, and it's very visual and interactive. a lot of animals in my book. So I have Komodo dragons, I have whales. One of the main characters is a whale. So I have a lot of visual on the PowerPoint, and then I ask the children questions, and I get them involved and make it very interactive, and I've had a great response to that. And then I have a reading where the kids actually put on simple costumes and become the characters in my book, and then they read from from some of the
that's great
chapters of the book. Yeah.
So you're sort of creating that same excitement about your book that you were explaining before you had about the books you were reading.
Exactly. That's what I want to do for the children. And I read it to a third grade class last year. Once a week I'd go in whenever I could, and the teacher would continue. And the kids were wonderful. They just didn't want me to leave. And you can tell with children if they're bored.
Yes, right away.
They will fidget or they'll look around.
Right.
They were mesmerized by this book. They loved it, and they were wonderful. It was such a nice experience for me to do that.
Wow. You know, I've talked to writers and authors who say that they can sell a book basically just standing online at the supermarket. You know, once you get people talking about books and about stories.
Sure. If you're passionate about your book and you have a great story, then I sold, one time I was in a restaurant with some friends, and my friends, there was another family who came in with 3 children, and one of my friends just happened to say, "Oh, this is a famous children's author." and they said, "Really?" And they asked me about my book, and they bought 3 books for their 3 kids.
That's wonderful, and that was totally unexpected.
Yeah, it was a nice experience.
Now let's talk about social media. I mean, social media has become also very important in terms of marketing and promoting books. What types of things are you doing online to get the word out on Whale Island and the Mysterious Bones?
I have a blog. I just really started that blog. It's WordPress, www.whaleislandstories.wordpress.com, and I have a website as well. So I tie the two together. So there's always things going on that way. I also the blog. I have the website. And
also Facebook.
And Facebook. I have Facebook as well, and I also have I wrote a newsletter that I can email. It's an email marketing tool.
That's wonderful.
So I do that as well.
So you have a subscriber base, and you send out these emails once a month or once a quarter.
I
that
send
kind of
them out
thing.
whenever there's an event happening, whenever there's something going on. I'll send it out. So, and it also allows me some creativity because I can create it myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a Facebook fan page, or do you have a Twitter profile, those kinds of things?
I'm going to be working on Twitter. That's one of the things I'm going to be working on in the near future. Facebook is my own personal page, so people can find me there. I have to work on, since my book is fairly new, on having a page that's devoted solely to my book.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, the great thing about social media is that it's just all out there, available for us. You know, it doesn't cost any money to have a Twitter account or Facebook account.
And people are using it for everything these days.
Yeah.
If there's an event coming up, for any kind of event, you just post it on Facebook, and it goes out to as many friends and as many as their friends as they have. It gets passed around very quickly.
Yeah, it's like that old, shampoo commercial. I mean, you tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and so on, right? And it's instantaneous. That's the greatest thing about social media.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, all the legwork that you're doing also in terms of, pounding the pavement and writing letters and sending emails and making phone calls to libraries and bookstores. I mean, coupled with all the promotion on social media, I mean, just must be amazing in terms of the reach you have.
Oh, it's amazing. I feel like it hasn't even hit the tip of the iceberg yet.
Right.
I feel like there's just so many more contacts out there. I've been going to networking meetings. It's amazing how many people you can meet at networking meetings, even if it's just one person.
Right.
You can meet people, and that person can help you promote your book, and you can help them as well in other ways. So it really does help to go to networking meetings too.
Now, you attended the Book Expo in the spring, right? Was that your first?
Yes,
that was
a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's like the major event for book publishers and book publishing.
Right. I had the opportunity to promote my book through a book signing. I had a great response. People, to the very end, I had an hour to sign my book. I had met people in the industry, including librarians and an agent, and people from all over the country come to the Book Expo. It was a great experience. And I met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people along the way, and I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Now, do you think there's another novel on the horizon sometime soon?
Yes, there's another. I wrote, when I ended my book, because it's a series format. So the way I ended it, I knew that there would be another book. And when kids read it, then they ask me, oh, are you going to write another one?
So it's a cliffhanger ending, or?
It's kind of a little surprise, a little bit of a surprise there that happens at the end, but I'm not going to say what it is.
Right.
So and people will know after they read it that something's going to happen. The next book is on the horizon. Was
it easy to sort of slip right back in and get back? It's like putting on, an old pair of jeans or something and just get right back into the heads of the characters. Did you find it easy, or have you started writing it?
I have not yet, because I wanted to concentrate on this right now, and then I have a lot of ideas in my head, and I haven't actually sat down in front of the computer yet, but I have a lot of ideas floating around, and I know how I want to start the first chapter a little bit differently than I started.
That's all you need.
Right.
Well, I know we're running out of time, and there's a question that I like to ask authors when I interview them on my blog that I like to use here as well. Oprah has famously said that there is no such thing as luck without preparation and a moment of opportunity. And I was wondering if you would agree or disagree with that statement with regard to your own success as a writer.
I agree that you have to prepare. It's very important to spend time preparing and networking with people and having opportunities where you can meet people and sending out those letters, query letters and letters to people that you hope will respond to your book. But I do believe that a little bit of luck helps as well. But being prepared is very important.
Yeah, I agree. So you sort of make your own luck.
You do. You have to be an advocate for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for coming with us today. We loved having you, and please come back again, especially when you write that sequel.
I will. Thank you, Dina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on The Writer's Dream. Thank you.